There's multiple explosions rocking a chemical plant, blowing out doors on nearby homes, forcing mandatory evacuations.
Well, Robin, good morning. That mandatory evacuation still in effect this morning for the area immediately around the explosion site as that fire continues to burn.
Overnight, a massive explosion at this chemical plant in Port Neches, Texas, lighting up the night sky, causing neighborhood evacuations, and powerful enough to blow out windows at homes several miles away.
My dining room ceiling crashing down.
The plant, which is located about an hour and a half from Houston, produces chemical and petroleum-based products and has 125 employees. The first call was received at 1 o'clock this morning.
China has warned the United States of firm countermeasures after U.S. President Donald Trump signed into law the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. The legislation backs the city's anti-government protesters and comes just days after the pro-democracy victory at local elections. The warning comes as the U.S. ambassador to Beijing was summoned for a second time this week.
As expected, China's response came fast and furious after U.S. President Donald Trump signed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act into law. In a statement, China's foreign ministry said the move seriously interferes in Hong Kong's affairs and China's internal matters, adding that this is a gross hegemonic move. China also accused the U.S. of sinister intentions, stressing that this plot is bound to fail.
Sonora State is known for turf wars between cartels fighting over lucrative trafficking routes to the United States. And U.S. President Donald Trump says the solution to the violence is to designate cartels as terror groups.
You're going to designate the Mexican cartels as terror groups?
I am going to be designating the cartels, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
That'll be a big story.
I've been working on that for the last 90 days. You know, designation is not that easy.
No, I know.
You have to go through a process, and we're well into that process.
The terror designation makes it illegal for Americans to knowingly offer support to cartels, and suspected members will be banned from entering the U.S. Financial institutions will be required to block money and alert the U.S. Treasury Department. Those who buy guns in the U.S. for the cartels could face much heavier penalties.
And turn to Saudi Arabia, where the government is being accused of launching a new crackdown on political dissidents that has specifically targeted journalists, writers, and bloggers. Yet officials here in the United States have remained noticeably silent. Well, I wonder why. We bring in Rachel Blevins now to discuss the latest.
That's right, Scotty. Well, rights groups are now speaking out and claiming the Saudi government has arrested at least 8 people in the last 10 days, specifically targeting journalists for the crime of criticizing the government. Now, they say the arrest started around 4 p.m. on Saturday, November 16th in Riyadh, where at least 4 well-known writers and journalists were arrested and their laptops and phones were seized. Now, on that same day, another writer and political analyst was arrested and his home was raided in Medina. Then 2 days later, the home of a 6th writer was also raided, and he was arrested on November 18th. And then after another 2 days, 2 more homes were raided on November 20th and 21st. And in both cases, writers were arrested and their devices were seized.
Protesters cheer as Iran's consulate in the holy city of Najaf goes up in flames. A building they consider symbolic of Tehran's influence in Iraq. Iranian diplomatic staff were evacuated just in time, and the Iraqi authorities immediately declared a curfew. The incident could prove a turning point in the protests that have swept the country for nearly 2 months. Najaf is considered one of the main holy cities of Shia Islam, and in March, the Iranian president made it one of the main stops on his official trip. The protesters believe the Iraqi government is too beholden to Tehran, which feeds into their mistrust of a political class they consider corrupt. They're also unhappy with the high level of unemployment and poor public services.
The European Parliament has voted to declare a climate emergency. Lawmakers hope the move will send a powerful signal to the UN Climate Summit, which starts in Madrid next week. They're also aiming to put pressure on the incoming EU executive to take a leading role in the global fight against climate change.
Majority here amongst MEP lawmakers in Strasbourg backing that largely symbolic resolution. And that was one of the main concerns for some MEPs who have said, you know, it lacks a bit of substance. There was the concern that it could fuel expectations that then could not be met. And that is why the Conservatives, for instance, said, let's rather call it an urgency rather than emergency. Now, the majority of that House has now decided that Europe is the first continent to speak of an emergency.
When Hollywood studios want to show actors tossing around lots of money, like this scene in Casino,
everything looked on the up and up, right? Wrong.
Or in The Wolf of Wall Street,
I'm talking about this.
It's seldom the real thing. They use fake currency that looks real from a distance. But millions of dollars worth of it is showing up at America's retail cash registers, passed off as genuine, even though it's printed with disclaimers that say it's not real, for motion picture use only. Matt Fischler, a counterfeit expert at the U.S. Secret Service, says it takes a second look to realize it's fake.
In this case, for motion picture use only, is written in a very similar font to a genuine $100 bill.
I could see that a harried cashier who's handling thousands of these a day could easily skip over this.
That's certainly what the counterfeiter is hoping for.
Queensland drivers are about to cop the most severe penalties in the country if caught using a mobile phone behind the wheel. You'll be slugged with a $1,000 fine, so it will pay to know these rules.
The figures are staggering and tragic. Distracted drivers causing 33 Queenslander deaths last year alone. 1,300 more people taken to hospital. Soon, the fine for being distracted by a mobile phone will also be staggering. From February 1, drivers caught calling, texting, their hands on their mobile phones for any reason will be slapped with a $1,000 fine.
White car, drive on phone texting.
That's up from the current $400 infringement.
You know why you're being pulled over today?
Demerit point penalties will also increase from 3 to 4, and double demerit points will apply to those caught twice within 12 months.
The ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit has come to a close, but it marks the start of closer business ties between the two. This morning, Seoul hosted the Korea-Vietnam Business Forum.
Korean and Vietnamese business leaders and government officials gathered for a business forum Thursday to strengthen trade and investment ties, signing MOUs in infrastructure development, construction, and autos. Korea is the #1 country investing in Vietnam, and over 5,000 Korean companies have entered the Vietnamese market. Thanks to Vietnam's rapidly growing economy, bilateral trade between Korea and Vietnam has grown 100-fold since 1992. It is now Korea's third largest export market after China and the U.S.